What's up, Starcraft fans? Today we're doing the tier list for negative reinforcement on Part and Parcel. Brian, let's hear the mutation.
Part and Parcel is the map where we have to break boxes to collect parts. When we get enough, General Davis opens the hybrid and then dies to it. We then have to destroy the hybrids for her before running out of time to win the game. Enemies get stronger when their friends die. They also pull your units in when they die.
Alright, so we have Edpunhome and Joni in the call today. How are you guys?
Yeah,
Well,
good. Thanks, mate.
Nice. Joni, how do we rank the commanders this week?
So, I found it quite a difficult mutator to put a tier list together for. Actually, it's sort of you've got two mutators which basically have the ability to wreck your forces. The map plays an interesting part here on Part and Parcel, specifically with these mutators, and that's specifically with the Mobius hybrid with the attack wave spawner attack. Can throw a much bigger spanner in the works than you would want for some commanders. So yeah, I have ranked them very straightforwardly in terms of how good are you at fighting at long range, or just not caring about having your units being pulled around a lot? How good are you at dealing with crowd control in terms of your ability to either negate or just generally deal damage to deal with Avenger? And then obviously sort of standard stuff like com dependencies, how well do you deal with the map, etc.
Okay, what do you think, Edpunhome?
yeah, I mean, it's largely about just straight up fighting power. If you can outright bypass fighting enemies to get the parts, that's helpful, because then you aren't sacrificing any troops and you can save them for the bases you do have to crack to get to the hybrid and the hybrid themselves. But if you can just push through everything, then you'll be doing pretty well. And if you can bypass half of the mission, then you'll be doing pretty well as well.
Yes.
But yeah, it's basically just how good are you at fighting, pretty much.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's pretty much what all mutators are, but yeah, this one specifically, how good are you at fighting? Let's begin. Abathur, where do we have him?
Abathur is pretty good at fighting, particularly against the fatal attraction, things like swarm hosts. As long as you're careful with them and you don't get them fatal attracted, then the locusts can just kind of chunk things down, and it doesn't matter how much they get pulled around because they'll break through eventually. Same thing with Avenger. You kind of just have an endless wave of locusts to wash up any extra damage the enemy units are dealing. You do run the risk of fatal attraction with swarm hosts, but you could also just go for a pretty straight up pushing army with blinding clouds and things like that to kind of help mitigate the damage. I don't think he's perfect, but he does pretty well. So I had him in A tier.
A tier. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, very similar views really. Like, your early farming's not really impacted. Toxic nests, etc. on that. Not really impacted at all. Guardians may be a consideration to use as well. Keep them sort of far enough away, and with their long range, they are able to put a decent amount of damage down. But yeah, very similar views. I personally think it's a bit of a toss up between whether you use P2. Do you need the extra mobility on this map? Not necessarily. Having said that, the buff to locusts is pretty helpful. Having said that, if you wanted to go more of a mixed comp, maybe P0 very viable as well. But yeah, I had him A to B tier.
All right, both of you had A tier. Let's put Abathur in A tier. Did you guys consider that the symbiotes are able to shoot even though the ultimate evolution is being fatal attractioned?
Yeah, it for me, it didn't feel like a huge deal because Avenger. Once you get a big Avenger units, then it won't be doing a ton. But you'll also be getting fatal attracted less.
That's true. Oh,
It
by the
definitely
way,
helps, but I don't think it boosts him from A to S or anything.
you also recommended Vipers, but aren't they a huge risk of just getting sucked in and not being able to get themselves to safety because they are not one of the idiots with Deep Tunnel?
Yeah, it is a risk. I personally think the blinding clouds, just drop them at the start of the fight, and once you have biomass on them, they're relatively beefy, so I don't think they're just going to get insta-killed or anything like that.
Sorry, I'm only chuckling at that because ET is giving himself away as an exceptionally good 1v1 player in this instance, because as an exceptionally mediocre co-op player, I simply don't have like the brain power to use spellcasters properly.
Alarak, where do we have him?
So Alarak faces several problems this week. His sort of his typical strategy of basically charging in and doing more damage than the enemy do in order to obliterate them pretty quickly, and therefore avoid taking damage himself on his sort of glass cannon comp. That doesn't really work with Fatal Attraction. Structure Overcharge is really good on this for obvious reasons. However, like with many different unit comps, particularly with Alarak as like his hero unit himself, sort of charging in, he will inevitably want to close distance. Even if you're using Wrathwalkers or something like that, which do have that range advantage because they are, pretty big, like single hit damage. That sort of crowd control is going to be more problematic, I think. Does not help with this at all either. And the reality to it is that destroyers are not really very viable this week because they just get wrecked straight away.
Yeah.
So Alarak's sort of one of those ones where you kind of, I think it would be easy to assume that he's better than he is on this. I think that Slayers, I believe I'm right in saying, have a bit of immunity to Fatal Attraction using a Slayer comp, if I'm being honest. But yeah, he was harder to play than I thought he'd be. I had him in C to D tier.
C to D. What do you think, Edmund?
Yeah, I think it's a shame that Mama doesn't have the ability that some other big heroic units have of not being affected by Fatal Attraction, because that would make a big difference, this mutation. But yeah, you're just kind of getting sucked around. You don't have the greatest sustainability. You do have Wrathwalkers for ranged fire, but the instant you get Fatal Attraction once, you're in big trouble.
But if you get yourself killed, you're in huge trouble.
Unless you can manage to recall out, but trying to get the recall off while you're getting sucked around constantly by Mama auto-attacking everything around it, kind of a pain. So I had him in D tier. I think it's kind of painful as Alarak this week.
I can't believe we weren't able to manage to fit even one Yo Mama joke in there somewhere. But that's life. Both of you...
Yeah, his mother joke was too big to fit in a Yo Mama joke, so...
Yeah. So, Alarak D tier, that's where we both have him. Let's put Alarak D tier. No prestige recommendation because D tier is considered bad. Arcturus, where do we have him?
Arcturus has Earth Splitters, which are decent for gathering parts. The main problem is you have to actually get out there to get the parts. For a lot of that's not a huge problem because you can just drop pod. And you can still drop pod where there's enemy bases. You just might lose the guys a little more heavily there. But it's only 40 minerals to get some parts, so it's not a huge deal. The main problem is that doesn't work against the actual hybrid, so you'll want to move out onto the map to fight them most likely. Like, it technically works, but trying to chase hybrid down with Earth Splitters is kind of a complete pain, so I wouldn't do it. I think you just go P3 Suicide Bombers because they don't care about getting sucked around. Do some ESOs in your natural to get some parts if you want to. You probably don't even have to with Arcturus realistically, but it's a little more cost efficient, so I would do it. And then, yeah, just Suicide Bombers for the win, and I think he'll do pretty well. So I had him in A tier.
A tier. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, exactly the same strategy. Like, P3 Troopers pack a massive punch. Like, more than enough, particularly if you're not really using them for anything else, more than enough to deal with the Mobius hybrids. Exactly as ET said, like, ESOs, certainly in my experience, basically do like nothing against the Mobius hybrid at all. So I think you're basically better off using them to like clear the rest of the map whilst you're sort of dealing with the Mobius hybrid. P3, obviously, as mentioned. I had Arcturus actually in S tier because I sort of couldn't see using the aforementioned strategy, which we've sort of both clearly gravitated towards, if you'll excuse the pun. But like, I couldn't really see him having any like really significant problems on this. I can totally see the argument for A tier as well. There are some commanders who just deal with this very, very well. But I do think there is a shout for S tier here. I do think he deals with, the scenarios you come across.
What do you think about S tier at home?
My main argument for A tier over S tier is just compared to some of the people I have in S tier, his army is rather large with P3. You have a lot of little low health units, and the hybrid deal have various area damages that are much harder to dodge when you're getting fatal attracted around if they also summon an army. And just generally against splash damage, like, you get stormed and you can't do anything about it because you're getting fatal attracted directly into the middle of it. So that would be my argument against S tier, because there's just some commanders that don't really have that concern that Minsk has. And the weapons are cheaper, but they still aren't free. So you can run out of steam with Minsk on this map if you aren't careful with that kind of stuff on mutators.
All right.
I don't know. If you still think it's S with that, then maybe. But for me, that was why I had it on A.
No, I can see that. I think that's a fair one. I think it's sort of you're completely correct. They're not, although they are decent damage and effectively act like sort of banelings, they're not free. So yeah, no, happy with that. Yeah, happy with A tier.
Happy with A tier. So am I. Let's put Arcturus in A tier. Prestige wise, third one.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. Artanis. Where do we have him?
So, Artanis has, on paper, he's got a lot of tools. They're just quite difficult to use in a manner which is kind of error-free enough to, sort of guarantee that you're going to be okay, basically. Guardian Shell, excellent against Fatal Attraction. Space Archons, very, very good at clearing. Yes, they're going to get pulled around. Do they really care about that? Not too much. I think probably Tempests are the way to go. Due to long range, padding that out with some zealots as basically sacrificial fodder, I suspect will be the sort of way to play. The two biggest problems here is basically the sort of the army ramp, particularly into like first Mobius hybrid, that kind of thing, can be quite tough. You do not want to be taking taking fights here that you can't effectively completely dominate with your army comp remaining intact. Solar bombardment helps to a certain extent against the hybrid, but they will bounce out of it as well. So it's sort of not as useful as you may want it to. I think in general terms, like, Artanis is hampered massively by his lack of room for error here. I had him in C tier.
C tier. What do you think, Edmund?
Yeah, I think he does okay.
Ow! I'm okay.
Because of things like shield overcharge in particular can really help to mitigate the damage you're taking from being pulled around by Fatal Attraction. But he is a guy who likes to hold people at arm's length and punch them, and Fatal Attraction makes that a lot harder with like his best composition being Dragoons. Tempests, you tend to get a ton of overkilling, which means you're killing the units quite slowly, which means they're far more likely to get into range of your Tempests and then start pulling them around. And then you're really hurting because, again, they have a very slow fire rate and they tend to overkill, which is like where, 8 Tempests shoot a unit and it only took 2 Tempest shots to kill, if anyone doesn't know what that means. I had him in C tier as well, though. He's okay.
Okay. He's okay. He's very mid. C tier for Artanis, which is a lot better than what he normally ends up being. So, hey, can't complain. So, prestige-wise, do you want the third one here? Or do you prefer Garden Shell?
I think the Archons are quite nice because they do shoot off the energy even when they're getting pulled around, so they're still dealing some damage. So I think it's probably best to go P3, but if you really want Guardian Shell, obviously that does help somewhat with the survivability on getting pulled around. It's really, you could go P0 as well.
Okay. So, yeah, I think in general, Shield Overcharge is better than Garden Shell because Shield Overcharge leaves you with your full health intact if you pop it before the fight, whereas Garden Shell leaves you basically dead after the fight. If you survive the fight, because once Garden Shell runs out, you're dead. So, yeah, I think I would rather recommend third one just because Shield Overcharge renders you much better able to survive fights right? Instead of the garden shell one. Anyway, let's move on. Dehaka, where do we have him?
Dehaka is really, really strong. As I sort of alluded to with Alarak's mothership, there are some hero units that don't get affected by Fatal Attraction, and Dehaka has most of them in his arsenal, actually. He's got all 3 pack leaders aren't affected at all by Fatal Attraction, and they really don't care much about Avenger either, especially with P2, doubled health and damage. You're just kind of gonna rip through everything that the enemy has. So he's extremely strong. Dehaka does pretty well for getting parts. You can get Guardians out if you want to, or Mutalisks. Obviously, Mutalisks while moving take half damage, and they revive every 60 seconds if they take fatal damage. So they're extremely survivable. You can also just go Creeper Hosts and nuke things from forever away. He's really, really good, so I had him in S tier.
S tier. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, I sort of made 2 notes for Dehaka really, which is like creeper hosts don't care, or certainly their like locust spawns don't care, and P2 doesn't care either. So yeah, I had him in S tier.
S tier. Okay, let's put Dehaka in S tier. Prestige wise, second one.
Yes.
All right. Moving on. Fenix, where do you have him?
So Fenix is one of those commanders who is traditionally a bit comp dependent. Like, he is a bit weaker against air comps, and I think this as a mutator, in some instances, Fenix being one of them, can really emphasize that comp dependency. Like, if you get an air comp as Fenix, you are going to struggle more than if you don't. Having said that, like, Kaldalis is quite good. He gets pulled into things, which is where he wants to be, which is ideal. You're going to lose him a lot. Normally if you play like me. But he will like take some names on his way out, which is at least a bonus. I would use P2. You are then controlling a small ball that will move around and is pretty easily replaceable, which is absolutely ideal, and I think a pretty... it's not a perfect counter to Fatal Attraction, but it's quite a decent one. They do a lot of damage, which helps against Avenger as well. Do not play P1. You will get tucked in, and your Dragoon suit sort of nuke will be completely useless after its first shot. But yeah, I think in general terms, Fenix is like fine, but not great. I had him in B tier.
B tier. What do you think, Edwin?
Yeah, I think Fenix does decently well purely because of Kaldalis. You can just go P2, you just kind of send Kaldalis in over and over and over, and he takes a couple swipes and dies, but each swipe, swaths of units fall before him with the splash damage he has. So Kaldalis alone is 90% of your power in this mutation, but it's still a pretty good power. Obviously, the rest of the champions can be somewhat helpful as well, but it's mainly going to be Kaldalis carrying you here this week, and but he's not going to be carrying you extremely efficiently, just okay. So I had him in B tier.
All right, unanimous B tier. Prestige-wise, second one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Han and Horner, where do we have him?
Han and Horner does very well at getting the parts. You can basically just ignore having to push through any of the bases between you and the parts for the most part. Sometimes there will be turrets in the way and whatnot, but bombing platforms can pretty much get you all the parts you need solo. They even pick them up most of the time, which is helpful. Beyond that, it's a struggle bus for actual combat. Not a lot of great units. I think you probably want to go like wing commanders here so that you can have your beefier battle cruisers probably, and just try to survive with those. Don't put them in the Yamato mode, most likely, I'd say, because very slow firing and you're getting pulled around. But you do have the ability to teleport away with those, which is handy if they're getting low on health. And they'll do okay. So I actually also had them in B tier.
B tier. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, I would potentially, for once, consider playing P3 here. Your bombing platforms are going to get a lot of work done in terms of collecting parts and such. And then I think that because you have that ability, you can effectively use your cooldowns to deal with like wave spawns or like spawn camp them with mag mines, use widow mines, etc. Like there's plenty of answers to that. And then I probably, to be honest, use Reapers just because you can send a whole fleet of them in. You know, the reality to it is there are 3 Mobius hybrids that need dealing with. Like you can send in, if you're building up with bombing platforms, you can send in a very, very significant supply of Reapers, and it kind of doesn't matter if they all like die to the Mobius hybrid pretty much, because by the time you get to the next one, you'll have been able to rebuild them. So yeah, I mean they are by no means perfect. You know, whatever you send against the Mobius hybrid still runs the risk of being wrecked pretty hard. But they do have like a relatively decent time. I had them in B tier as well, actually.
All right, B tier. So that's where Hot and Horn ends up being, but prestige wise, you said third one? What do you think about third one?
I would so simply to now allow you to build up more bombing platforms.
What do you think, Edmund?
I would still go wing commanders personally. I think having the like if you get an air comp, then the attack waves are going to be a pain to deal with. Things like that. So having like the battle cruisers, I think is probably better.
What do you think about wing commanders, Joni?
I'm not against it. I can definitely see the logic. My worry would be that when you get, particularly if you get the Mobius hybrid getting Avenger, like even P2 battle cruisers are going to get wrecked in reasonably short order. You know, as I mentioned sort of right at the start, I think that the attack wave spawn on the Mobius hybrid can be a huge problem. So I personally, I'd sort of be more inclined almost to go mass Reapers just because they're cheap and easy to replace. But I can see the logic behind the sort of going BC here as well. So the advantage you have with them on this is that it really is not. I personally don't think it's too much of a case of what do I need to deal with the entire map with in terms of my comp. It's what am I going to use to throw at the Mobius hybrid, like pretty much in and of itself. So yeah, that's kind of my view on it. But I can totally see why any of the any of the prestiges really. Like if you wanted to go Reapers, Widow Mines, etc. P1 would be totally viable as well. More mag mines to spawn camp with, etc. So yeah, I think they're actually pretty versatile this week, which is nice.
Speaking of versatile, I have one note about that because both Widow Mines and mag mines can be pulled by Fatal Attraction. I tested this out, really sad. The mag mines are understandable, but Widow Mines, even when they are burrowed, can still be pulled. It's crazy. I tested this out on Void Launch, and they were just dancing around underground somehow. Yeah. Yeah, logic. Amazing. Anyway, Hot and Horner B tier. That's where we have them. Prestige wise, use anyone you want. It's probably not great, but not terrible either. So let's move on to someone who's not good, not terrible. Yeah.
Sorry, mate.
Karax. Where do we have him?
So Karax has the advantage that basically nothing he's going to use is affected by Fatal Attraction at all. Really. Use P3. Use your top bar.
Win.
You know. Win pretty much. Like, you know, cannon pushing is the way forwards here. Monoliths are extremely good, even against Avenged sort of Mobius hybrids, etc. So yeah, basically top bar good, buildings good. P3 for the win. S tier.
S tier. What do you think, Edwin Home?
Yeah. Top bar, you can use an observer to get vision of the parts and even collect them, I think. And turrets, cannons. You can kind of pre-clear where the hybrid are if you want to set up cannons there, or just fight them with the top bar. And it'll be a pretty simple, fun time. So yeah, S tier.
Fun time. S tier. All right. Prestige-wise, third one?
Yes.
Ball and Marketing insisted on using the first one because he can get away with it. It's probably fine.
Yeah, you can probably get away with it.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Kerrigan. Where do we have him?
Kerrigan heavily relies on Kerrigan, which is a problem when she's getting Fatal Attracted all over the place. But most of the enemy bases are relatively sparse defenders-wise, so I think she'll still stay alive, especially if you can duck back into a Nidus Worm to heal, go home, maybe even and transfuse if you have some extra queens at home if you want to make those. The nice thing is that she doesn't have like passive damage, so you're not going to be like some commanders, you can't help but get fatal attracted once it starts because your units just auto attack or have passive damage around them and are killing units even if you're trying to click them away. Kerrigan, you can just leap out of there after the fatal attraction wears off and you'll be fine. The other big thing is immobilization wave. Does a lot of damage in a big area, helps to clear out the enemy bases so you can get the parts. So she's definitely not like super strong, but I think she's solid. So I had her in B tier.
B tier. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, very similar views. The conclusions I drew were that you probably want to use P0 or P3 as opposed to P2. I don't think building Fury stacks on this is going to help. I do think that having a very powerful immobilization wave will help. Despite, like ET said, the bases being a bit sparse, I think it's still a useful tool. Unit comp-wise, I sort of really wasn't sure what you would want to do here. My notes included Lings, Broodlords, Lurkers, like effectively everything that's still going to get pretty ruined, but just not as heavily ruined as, like trying to play Hydras or something like that. So I think Kerrigan's not dissimilar in my mind to Alarak in the sense that whilst she's not as glass cannon-y, if she gets wrecked, she's going to get wrecked really, really hard. And like not losing your hero unit here is imperative, basically. So yeah, I was a bit less optimistic about her. I had her in sort of I had her B to C tier, but I was sort of erring towards C tier because I think the margin for error with her is like smaller than with a Fenix or a Han and Horner.
Are you okay with C tier, Edmundham, or B tier is better?
I don't know. I think she's definitely a lot better than Artanis for this. I think just on one note on the P0, P3, I think you definitely want to go P0 because you want leap. You need the extra mobility to like get away once you get fatal attracted. Otherwise, you are going to be losing Kerrigan a lot more. But beyond that, I think immobilization wave is very nice for clearing the bases. Her only real struggle is going to be dealing with the actual hybrid, but I think just like probably mass Ultralisk, you have the revive from them and they're quite tanky, is going to do well enough. And then Kerrigan herself obviously is pretty tanky as well. Yeah, I don't know. I think she's better than Artanis by a good bit. I'd put her up in B tier with Han and Horner and Fenix personally. I think if we put Fenix in B tier purely for Caldalis, I think Kerrigan probably is roughly equal with one Caldalis with everything she has.
Plus she has lurkers.
She does have lurkers as well. Yeah, no, that's a fair one. Yeah, I'd done it the wrong way round and compared her to Fenix and Han and Horner rather than comparing to Artanis. Yeah, she's definitely stronger than Artanis. Yeah, happy with B tier. Yeah.
All right. Prestige wise, no prestige.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say so.
All right. Moving on. Nova. What do we have him?
So P3's good for Nova. She can basically scuttle around, clearing stuff completely on her own, picking up ballast parts, etc., and not really caring whether she gets fatal attracted or not. You can probably avoid it in the main. If you can't, doesn't matter. Griffin airstrike's very good for waves. If you're good with P3, you can use that for waves as well, but you probably don't need to. And then you basically fight the Mobius hybrids with Liberators. So she's got all the tools. It's not as totally free as that sounds. You do still need to worry about losing Liberators, etc. But she does have a decent toolkit. So I had her in A tier.
A tier. What do you think, Edmundham?
Yeah, I think she does pretty well. Yeah, you can just P3 to dodge past everything and get the parts if you need to. Beyond that, yeah, I mean, just Liberators or, well, probably really more like Ravens are decent. Liberators, you will get pulled around a little bit, but...
Ravens will get pulled out a little bit.
That's true. I just mean you can throw out the turrets and then run. um,
I guess.
Again, with being able to click spellcasters back, skill, I guess I didn't know was exclusive. Anyways, no, I think she'll do decently well. But yeah, she's definitely not S tier. I had her in A tier as well. Yep.
Okay. Nova A tier. Moving on. Raynor, where do we have him?
Raynor is basically like P3 and hope that you can get up enough stuff to get a lot of Hyperions out, I think. Bio is terrible against Fatal Attraction generally, especially with Avenger out there. And you just try to max out on battle cruisers, basically, get parts without losing any battle cruisers, either by using the Hyperion and the Banshees, or just being very careful with your battle cruisers. And then hopefully you have a maxed out battle cruiser army, or as much as you can for each hybrid wave, and they'll be able to punch through with the Hyperion's help. So I think if you can do that, if he can get going and survive for that whole time through the attack waves and everything, he'll do pretty well, but it's kind of a pain to actually survive through the attack waves and everything. So I had him in D tier.
D tier. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, I suspect the comment section may rightfully reflect that I clearly hit like an intellectual wall when trying to figure Raynor out. Like I just couldn't like either survive long enough or sort of sort my life out with him to the extent that I could like figure out actually a good plan.
Don't worry. Most of the guys who comment about Raynor in the comment section either haven't played him either or just got carried and think that Raynor's good because they're dropping mules. That's it. I told you last week there will be at least one guy who would comment on Raynor being higher just because he has scans. Lo and behold, what did I say? What did I say? Don't worry about those guys. If someone comments on Raynor and they're not Lila, you don't have to worry about it. Assume they're wrong.
No, I mean I certainly wasn't worrying about it. I just they'd probably be correct in terms of like commenting on my inability to play him this week. I genuinely did wonder whether a massive bio ball was the way to go, just in terms of DPS, and sort of forget about being pulled around and just accept that it's going to happen. Useful thoughts. Spider mines are really good for spawn camping. Again, potentially, like ET said, P3 BCs in order to get your top bars down. But yeah, I was not optimistic about Raynor this week. I actually had him in E tier. I just think he is generally weaker than Alarak and has equally fewer responses or decent responses to this mutator.
What do you think about E tier at home?
On my little tier list maker, I'd actually added the E tier row this week for Raynor, but then kind of decided like maybe he's D tier, so I'm completely fine with E tier.
You're completely fine with E tier. Very sad times for Raynor.
I think it's fine.
I mean, siege tanks at least can shoot, even though they do still get affected by fatal attraction. Did you know that the siege tanks get temporarily stunned with fatal attraction, but they don't get pulled in, so they can still fire away. And as a bonus for Raynor, they can siege up and siege out pretty quickly. So you can't kind of do that if you are a masochist. But for us, we can see that he's E tier, so that's where he goes. No prestige recommendations because E tier is considered bad. Stat boy, where do you have him?
So yeah, sort of other end of the spectrum, basically. Stetmann basically plays completely normally with Super Gary if you're playing P2, which I think you should. Being sort of irritated by Fatal Attraction, but not grotesquely bothered by it. The one thing that I didn't have time to test with him is how well Green Zone Overcharge works against Fatal Attraction. But I mean, look, either way, P2 Super Gary has incredible survivability, which is always useful. You are going to need to be a little bit careful that he's not getting pulled too far outside of stat zones, which is going to be your bother. He does also, however, have, particularly if you're using infestors, like lots of free units to soak up a load of sort of the other stuff which goes on. Obviously, like Stetlings as normal, very, very good. Yeah, he's basically just got a raft of really good answers, which mean that this is an irritation to him rather than a massive problem. So I actually had him in S tier.
S tier. What do you think, Edmund?
Infestors S tier.
Very nice. All right, that's concise and it's effective. S tier for Stetboy, unanimous. Have you guys considered lurkers? I know infestors are less stressful probably, but have you considered lurkers?
I think they'd be fine. But infestors, you're basically risking no units of any value, whereas the lurkers do have to be somewhat near the enemy to get things done. Infestors basically don't have to leave your natural really with blue zone, so that would be my argument.
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to note that apparently when you use the lurkers tunnel of terror, the thing where they move forward underground, that renders them immune to fatal attraction. They're not even stunned. So imagine that. They're not stunned. But the way I imagine it is, yes, they're not stunned, but they're locked in that motion. So it's as if they are stunned anyway. It's just that you chose when and how to stun them, rather than letting the mutator dictate when and how they are stunned. So just a fun little note. But yes, Stat West here. Moving on. Stukov, where do we have him?
Stukov is very strong this week as well, because you can just make bunkers and send infinite units, and you don't care how much they get fatal attracted around or how strong the enemy units are, because you just have infinity free units. So it is a P3 S tier week once again.
What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, it's sort of the big problem if you're not a Stukov P3 liker, that it is actually quite good against almost anything that doesn't actively punish you for having masses of units on the map. The ramp can be a little bit rough, but you've got decent top bars to deal with it. Yeah, S tier.
S tier. Very straightforward. Moving on. Swann, where do we have him?
So Swann is basically weaker Karax again this week. He is, however, quite a lot weaker in my view. I think that you can relatively happily sort of emulate. Well, with Swann, there is a choice to make. Do you want to use like the powerful laser drill to do everything and play P1 but not have top bars to deal with enemy waves in particular, or do you want collecting parts to be more of a nuisance but have better like wave dealing with mechanics? My preference personally would be to use P1, clear the map pretty robustly, and then effectively build turret farms in strategic locations so that enemy waves like just fall onto turret farms and get dealt with like that, basically. But yeah, he's sort of, for a commander who ought to play very, very similarly to Karax, he sort of does, but is significantly weaker. I had him in B tier.
B tier. What do you think, Edmund?
I think laser drill's pretty good, and factories are pretty good for getting vision with it. So I think he's actually, I had him in A tier. I think between that and basically just the laser drill P1 probably. You can probably pretty much just laser drill solo it. I'm not a big laser drill soloist, but I know there are many who are. So you can go for that, and then anything else. I mean, turrets obviously don't care about fatal attraction. If you pre-clear the hybrid areas again, you can just drop 20 turrets down. And then at the end, you can just, unlike Karax even, salvage them for a full refund and go build them at the next hybrid location. So I had him in A tier personally.
What do you think about A tier, Joni?
So my only sort of counterpoint to that, I say only counterpoint, I think there are two small things which for me don't put him into A tier. One of which is that if you're not careful in terms of your SCVs, when you're building those turrets, they basically just get pulled away, get wrecked, and then you end up like forgetting about them.
Oh no, the
so
50 mineral SCVs. What am I gonna do?
Well, so yes, appreciating that, but actually, what it means is you end up with a turret farm which is pretty slow and actually can be a bit complicated to put up. So that for me was a bit of a consideration. I also think that if you do play P1, which I think you probably should, the laser drill ends up with an awful lot to do. And, it is good, it is strong, but at the same time, clearing those hybrid areas and dealing with clearing the areas you need to clear in order for the waves not to affect you, etc. Like, the laser drill is doing a lot of work, and I think you have to effectively micro the laser drill very, very well in order to hit all of your sort of timings and stuff that you need to for this. So I just think that compared to like a P3 Nova, for example, playing Swann well and correctly on this is like significantly more involved. Having said that, he is pretty strong. Once you get those turrets up, there's really no reason you should be sort of having any problems. So I can see A tier, but I just kind of reckon that he's not quite as easy as some of the A tier commanders. But yeah, I mean, bottom of A tier, top of B tier.
What do you think about wraiths?
I think wraiths are going to die pretty quickly, and
Don't
have
they
not
have
tried
the
playing.
don't they have the damage reduction thing when they are cloaked? And also,
There's
don't they deal more
chance for them to
damage?
negate damage.
Yeah, don't they deal more damage when they are moving? And doesn't fatal attraction by definition render them always moving? So it's like auto micro.
Well,
If I remember right, fatal attraction actually at the end of it, it like completely kills their movement, so they have to accelerate back up to speed again. Like you get
I
pulled
was going
over.
to say because of the stun effect. The stun effect on fatal attraction makes it less helpful.
I do think that there is a big argument for wraiths, especially like you could do that against the hybrid specifically because you can kind of just dance around any enemy units and literally just target the hybrid down and never have to deal with Avenger at all. And then that even bypasses the issue of if the hybrid summons waves of units, you can kind of literally just dance around them with the wraiths killing the hybrid because the hybrid by default isn't any stronger, and you're not going to be getting fatal attracted that way. So I think there's definitely an argument for wraiths there, or turrets. I think is either one is completely fine. Or you use the wraiths to clear out the area and then build turrets. I think the big thing with the turrets is, again, you only have to build them in 3 spots. Well, in your bases if you want to defend them with turrets.
Yeah.
3 spots. All you have to do is clear them out in advance. Like, it's not that hard to clear them out, and then you don't have to worry about fatal attraction on your SCVs because there's no enemy units there anymore. But I do think wraiths is completely fine to do.
Yeah. I was just thinking that yes, they will need to be stopped after fatal attraction, but after fatal attraction, they're clumped up since they're in a ball of wraiths. So they will naturally declump, and the declump is motion. So anyway, that's kind of too on the details. So let's just move on. Oh wait, Swann, did we say A tier?
I said A tier. I think we were arguing about that.
Yeah, but I think did you say you're fine with A tier, Joni, or are you still on B tier this time?
I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. I don't think he's going to be. Put it this way: he's not at the top of A tier, and he's not at the bottom of B tier. So I'm happy with either.
Okay. Prestige wise, first one, right?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, let's move on then. Tychus, where do we have him? I agree.
Am I up? Okay. Tychus. Sorry, when the discussions run long, I completely lose track of which one of us talked first. Tychus is very, very good this week as well. I would personally go P3 because Odin doesn't care about Fatal Attraction. And the Odin also probably really doesn't care about Avenger units. He will just kill them. So I would go P3. You get Rattlesnake and/or Nikara, and you have infinite healing on the Odin once it comes out. All you have to do is just make it to 10 minutes, which won't be too hard because you are still Tychus at the end of the day. And while the Outlaws care a little bit more, serious turrets don't care, and Tychus Grenade doesn't care that much. So I think he's extremely strong. I had him in S tier.
S tier. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, exactly the same view. I think, despite the fact P2 is typically sort of chonky enough to deal with Fatal Attraction on its own, actually a sort of heavily Avenged Mobius hybrid, if you get to that point, can be like a really significant problem. Even with a P2 Tychus. So like my inclination would be exactly as ET said, play P3, keep dropping the Odin as and when you can. And he basically plays sort of pretty much totally normally. Similarly to Stetmann, I think the Fatal Attraction becomes an inconvenience rather than a game breaker at that point. So I had him in S tier as well.
All right, S tier. Dogwalker. For some reason, Odin is immune. It's like the pack eaters. When you said that Dehaka is most of them, you weren't lying. The other one belongs to Tychus. Unless there are more units that are immune, I don't think there are any more. Right? Just those
None
four?
that come to mind.
All right.
None I could think of. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. Vorazun. Where do we have him?
So, Vorazun has, as with a lot of things, like she's got sort of Vorazun problems this week. Air comps are a massive issue for her. Your Corsairs are going to get flung about everywhere. Yes, Disruption Web's still useful, but the reality to it is they are probably going to get wrecked pretty quickly, which alongside her traditional lack of like available gas is going to make actually putting comps together and maintaining them really problematic. Time stop's great as always, like it's super powerful, but you have more problems this week than simply clearing bases. So yes, her DTs are good. Yes, being pulled around to a certain extent isn't a massive issue with them, because they're immune to it during Shadow Strike, and they want to be up close. Having said all of that, I've got her in sort of I found her really difficult to place actually. I put her in C tier with Artanis, but I think that she shares a lot of common problems actually with Alarak. I just think she kind of deals with them. Now I've said all of that, I wonder if she actually does deal with them any better than he does. Let's see what I've got her in C tier, but let's see what ET says.
What do you think, Edwin Hum?
Well, I am a professional Vorazun hater, so I had her in D tier. I think, the Fatal Attraction is kind of a pain. I believe the one nice thing is that Shadow Fury, I believe they can't be Fatal Attraction for the duration.
No, it's similar to, well, not similar, almost identical to the Tunnel of Terror, Stat Boy Lurkers. They're not stunned, but they're effectively stunned because they are not able to perform anything else while during the Shadow Fury animation. It's just you choose when and how they are stunned.
Yeah, well, and obviously you much prefer them being stunned doing a Shadow Fury than being stunned doing nothing. So that is like her big saving grace there. But if you get an air comp, yikes. And then if you get a big Avenger Mobius hybrid, probably yikes as well. You just got to play pretty slowly, I think, with her. Rely on your top bars a good bit, and clear with Shadow Fury, and she'll do. I had her in D tier personally.
All right, what do you think about D tier, Joni?
Yeah, perfectly happy with that.
All right, Vorazun is D tier this week. Let's move on. Zagara, where do we have him?
Zagara has some decent stuff going on this week, mainly free units as per ever, really. The big concern is not sending in all of your army all at once every time, because again, splash damage, and you're going to have a lot less control over that. It's also a lot harder to like just move command your banelings, because, well, if you do that, if you move command your banelings and then they get fatal attracted, it resets the order and then they just explode on whatever's next to them. So kind of a pain. Beyond that, my main concern is running out of steam against the third hybrid, because that does happen sometimes whenever there's mutators going on that cause them to be more powerful, as Zagara specifically. Obviously, you can just go like Mass Scourge and try to just target down the third hybrid, I think would probably actually be what I'd go for. And if you can do that, then great. And if that fails and you run out of money, then yikes. But she's all right. She's definitely not stellar in my opinion, though. So I had her in B tier.
Okay. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, she's exactly as ET said. She's another commander where her units being pulled around is a problem. As sometimes, the reality is her banelings will effectively bounce around an army. Running out of steam is a bit of a problem. In terms of you've got some ability to spawn camp with them. Certainly, you're not going to look to take out like an entire attack wave with them. However, in a lot of instances, those attack waves are in transports some of the time, and you can certainly thin them out to a decent extent, which will, in the long term, save you a bit of eco, stop you running out of gas as quite as quickly as you may otherwise. I had her in A tier. I think P1 does play this pretty well. Yeah, I think she is stronger than the commanders we've got in B tier currently, and certainly significantly easier to play.
Okay. What do you think about A, Evan?
I guess that's fine. Yeah, just be careful not to lose all your banelings, and you should be okay. So I'm good with A.
I think the bio launchers push her into A tier.
Yes, true.
Because maybe
even
was,
S or double S.
Yeah. Zagara A tier. Finally, Zeratul. Where do we have him?
Cannon's good. Cannon's not affected by fatal attraction. Yeah, Zeratul is good. He's got actually a really, really significant toolkit to deal with this. The
he is Zeratul after all.
Well, exactly. Yeah. The Telbrus Legion actively enjoys being pulled around to a certain extent because it means they're closer to the next thing they need to whack. The Demote dude, as always, like very, very good. So yeah, he's just got a really robust toolkit as always, and the cannons are ultimately going to win you the game. But he deals with everything pretty well, so I've got him in S tier.
What do you think, Edmund?
Yeah, cannon's very good. Obviously, you can go Knowledge Seeker and have like +10, +10, +10 cannons by the end of it, which don't care at all about Avenger. And Demote Dude really helps with Avenger as well. Your units aren't going to target the drones over their other units when you demote them to drones. So yeah, I had him in S tier.
All right, S tier. Just a note that yes, cannons are good, but against Avenger, I don't know. Especially against an enemy comp with high damage output, they sometimes don't do as well as you hope for. Just leaving it out there. Sometimes they just don't clear out the area, and they themselves get cleared out, and it takes a minute for them to get back online. That being said, you can just use them again, especially when you have the second prestige. Yeah,
that's what Telbrus Legion's for as well. In my mind, is sort of going in and allowing you to get those cannons down when they're a bit thinned out.
Okay, so do we have a double S this week?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, top of S.
My personal, I would vote for Dehaka as well. Actually,
yeah, he has 3 guys who are immune.
And then the guy who has 1 guy who's immune for me, Tychus, and then probably Stukov.
I think there's a big shout for Karax.
Yeah, I mean he's a little more. He uses like 5% of your brain power instead of 0. That Stukov does, so that'd be my argument.
For good players, maybe 5%. For regular players, it uses 10%. So
yes, true.
Yeah.
I think they're pretty equal. I do think I don't know. There's energy management to worry about with Karax, whereas Stukov, it's literally just, did you spend your minerals on the 400 mineral buildings, which are super easy to spend your minerals on? Is your only skill check. So I'd
You
have
do-
him
you do
above.
also-
I think.
I think you're probably right. You do also get to basically just go to sleep by the time you've ramped Stukov up, whereas Karax, you're going to be working all game, and like losing observers potentially if you make a mistake is annoying. So yeah, no, happy with that. I think that's actually a pretty good order for S tier in general. Actually, I think Stetmann's a little bit better than Zeratul.
Just remember to get
Yeah.
detection for Stukov, either overdudes or brood queens, or else you will have, especially against Zerg, or else you will have 10 stack Avenger lurkers. Just making sure you'll never get anywhere near wherever you want to go. Just putting out there.
That's true.
Top of A?
I would probably look at someone like Nova. A P3 Nova is pretty punchy this week. Arcturus is very good. Abathur is very good. I'd probably be inclined to have Swann at the bottom.
Yeah? Okay, top of B tier. No complaints, B tier then.
I think probably Han and Horner at the top. I don't know. That B tier's hard. They're all pretty equal. I think that's probably fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably fine. Yeah.
Okay. D tier?
I think Vorazun above Alarak, probably.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, perfect.
That's it. There are 11 commanders in S and A, so I don't need to do the commander synergy thing. There are like 7 commanders below that, and they form a giant F. So that tells you what you need to know. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. If you have an idea for Velocity, please leave it in the comment. I'll see you guys next time.